Welcome to the Rewatchers on the pod. Is that loud? Am I loud? I'm always loud.
Sorry, I screwed you up.
We are never going to get a fucking clean open on this
That
podcast.
was 100%
ever.
my fault, though. I didn't have one headphone on. I was like, why can't I hear him?
It's 2020 and I have turned a new leaf. Welcome to the podcast. Today we are going to do it a little different. No, we're not binging anything, and we are not talking about a specific movie, but we are looking back at the past decade as well as the past year as we head into 2020. My name's Mitchell Marshall. Here with
Tyler McKinley.
Riley Harris.
Marcus Marinos.
Tyler Harris.
Justin Hammer.
So we're going to focus on three subjects today. The one thing we each got to choose that we want to talk about for the year, for the decade, and then a decade wild card. And this is just something that has changed or impacted us and is linked to all these things that we love to talk about together. And we're going to break those down one by one.
Yeah. So all of us have chosen three things essentially in those or one thing in each of those categories, and we're just going to talk about them and have a good time.
And did you specify that the first two are like movies or TV of some
Yeah.
sort?
Right, and then the wild card can be a life event or a medium, a social network, just anything that like is how we consume and how we change and express.
Yeah, something that's as
sounds way more legit than
disruptive
it is.
as something like The Joker, which brings us to our first... No, we're not going to talk about it. I don't think anyone chose The Joker to talk about.
No.
It's fine. We just didn't. No one wants to talk about it.
So we're going to rotate through these, and you're going to get the first half of them today, and then whenever you're listening to this, and then the next week we're going to release the next half of them. So we're gonna go through them all. So it's going to be fun to kind of jump around between those feelings, and of course, everything we talk about within the year will connect through 2019 and the decade, etc. So Riley, get us kicked off with this is your movie of the year.
Mm-hmm. My favorite movie that came out this year was Booksmart. It was directed by Olivia Wilde, and she crushed it. I loved this movie.
It was a debut, right?
Yeah.
That was the first thing? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
That's amazing.
I thought the cast was amazing. I thought how they kind of depicted their friendship was amazing. Like, it felt really real, and I really enjoyed that. Billie Lourd, who played Gigi, is amazing. Like, every time she's on the screen, she's like my favorite person there. Yeah.
Give us just kind of a brief summary, like what Booksmart covers. It's pretty well worn territory, but like I think it's worth noting. Like,
So it's about these two girls that are seniors in high school, and they're about to graduate, and they realize that they kind of wasted all of their time. Well, not wasted, but they didn't really have fun in high school. They just kind of focused on academics and getting into good colleges. Then they realized that even the kids that partied got into the same colleges that they did. And so they decide to go to like have a rager like the night before graduation and kind of go out with all their peers and stuff. And along the way, crazy things happen. It's really fun to watch.
I will say, when this movie came out, everyone was like, it's like Superbad, but with girls. And I was like, that sounds awful. Like, I don't know when the last time you watched Superbad was, but I don't know. It's fine. It's not great, I don't think.
I think Superbad had a really big impact. I think the irreverence and the excitement of it was genuinely pretty funny. But
it's not what I want in 2019. You know what I mean?
And it was about them being idiot dudes.
Yeah. And I feel like Booksmart does have like an incredible amount of heart for what it is.
A lot more realism and depth than Superbad.
And it does, like you mentioned Billie Lourd's character, and I'm never going to remember that other guy's name that plays her.
Yeah.
Skylar Jacindo. It starts with a G. It's a hard word.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Skylar, just be happy your name made it into
His
this
name's
podcast.
Jared in the movie. You can just call him Jared.
The kid from Righteous Gemstones, I'm going to call him. But yeah, like it even gives this really great rounding out of stories to its side characters in ways that are really touching and emotional. And I feel like you don't necessarily always get in a teen movie. Unless you're talking about one of my favorite teen movies, which is from the 80s, which was written by John Hughes, and he always did that because he's fucking awesome.
Did you just reference 6 movies at once?
Yes, the teen sextet of John Hughes.
Okay.
By the way, this was not Olivia Wilde's directorial debut. She also directed a music video for the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
No way.
Which one?
Really?
It is called. Sorry, I'm.
Californication.
She was like 15.
She played the video game that is.
It's a video short, so I don't know if it's a full music video, but it's called Dark Necessities.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Anyway,
It's off the Getaway or Gateway, whatever that second shitty album they did recently was. It's better than the one before it, but the
are they?
Oh, I know. Okay, I can see the cover of it in
with
my
the
mind now that
raccoon
you
and the
said it.
girl
Yeah,
and the bear.
Okay.
She is not credited as a writer, but really cool. It's 4 women, and I recognize their names, and so I feel bad that I can't look at all their credentials right now. But Emily Halpern, I know that name for some reason. Sarah Haskins, Susanna Fogel, and Katie Silberman. So, but I know she was instrumental in the way it came, and that's one of those movies. It didn't go through production hell, but it was rewritten a few times because it was important to people, and I think it turned out really well for something that I know it started like those characters went through a lot of iterations as they did their relationship, so it ended up really awesome.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Sweet. Next up, Marcus, you're going to grace us with your best of the decade movie or television program.
I'm gonna do both, if that's okay.
I have not set any boundaries.
Let's do it.
Is that allowed?
Let's party.
Okay. Well, I just like to start off by saying I'm happy to be back with the
missed
game.
you.
We got everybody back together tonight.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
My heart's beating really fast.
It has been a while.
Well, that might be because you guys are playing footsie, but
Well, we're sitting right across
That's why
from
I've
each
missed
other.
him
We're
so
staring
much.
into each other's eyes.
Yeah, that's where we usually put our guests, and
Yeah.
they hate playing footsie with Tyler.
usually they're like, "Is this part of it?"
No
And we're
one's
like,
reciprocated as well as Marcus has. So.
Yes. You volunteered to sit across from him. You volunteered for this footsie
This is good
to be on this podcast.
I was
toe
just
is- okay,
really
go on.
surprised that you were barefoot. No, but I am really happy to be with you guys and keep talking about this stuff. It's really fun. I'm going to talk about a movie and a TV show. My movie of the decade I chose is The Grand Budapest Hotel, which is one of those movies. I don't know. I feel like sometimes there is just content or media, whatever it is, that speaks to you, and sometimes you kind of just don't know why.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is one of them that has really stuck with me and has remained one of my favorite movies over the years since I've seen it. I think it came out in like 2014, 2015. Yeah.
2015?
2015,
Yeah.
I think.
And you know how like your taste changes over the years, and you know your list of favorite movies changes, but that one has always remained there because it is just so, it has so much in it, and it is so well done. I think it is, in my opinion, Wes Anderson's peak top work. I'm a huge fan of Wes. You know, my boy, if you're listening, love your stuff.
Shout out.
Hit me up. You know, we haven't hung out in a while. Some things that really stand out to me in this is, of course, the unique cinematography. I love how different time periods are associated with different aspect ratios and different color schemes and color palettes, and it displays, you know, the different time periods in such a unique way that you don't usually get to see.
I feel like one of the things that does too is it makes the emotional impacts of those stories really incredible, because I think especially like you see those switches basically at the top of the movie and kind of towards the end,
Yes.
and removing yourself from kind of that main story in that way where you're like literally yanked out of that world, it feels like at the end, and then it unites them again. I don't know. It's a really interesting thing, and it's like one of those things where it's like that very easily could be a gimmicky thing, and it totally isn't in this movie. Like, it feels so calculated,
Right.
and like perfect for what they're going for.
Because you try to describe it, and you're like, okay, well, it's a kind of a flashback in a flashback in a flashback,
Right.
And you're like, what's the point of all that? But it is just melded together so beautifully.
Yeah.
Wonderfully cast. I absolutely love Ralph Fiennes. You usually see him in a lot of like very serious characters, but in this he's really goofy, and the movie's just so funny, but it's also very heartfelt. And of course, in like all of Wes Anderson's movies, it has an amazing supporting cast, of all the regulars you see. But I love the fact that there are a lot of these huge A-list actors are playing very small roles, and so you have I don't know. I love sort of the storybook kind of visuals you get from the movie, but then you have these characters that are real but also absolutely ridiculous. You have people just crazy outbursts. You have really suspenseful moments. To me, it is a masterpiece.
The way he does those moments, like the way you invest in characters that are both ways, and the way that he builds that tension and plays with it, it's incredible because his world is so specific and so fun to be in. And you compare it to something like Isle of Dogs, like it's just crazy the different things he can do, but you feel like you're in that same world. And I would also say we're seeing a huge amount of his impact in Taika Waititi taking off, and maybe less in Thor, but definitely like in Jojo Rabbit and What We Do in the Shadows. Like, it's not a Wes Anderson-y feel, but that influence is clearly there. And so, like you said, like it's just joyful to be among that storytelling and those characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to see his style kind of. I would agree with you that, because in my personal taste, I'm like, that and Moonrise Kingdom are pretty neck and neck for me. Mm-hmm. But I would have to say Grand Budapest Hotel is the better movie. I think his use of, he's got this gimmick that he uses where it's a lot of weird camera movement to like laterally that he uses, and the comedic timing is just, he's now reached like peak. Like in this film, he's using it perfectly. It's timed perfectly. He's like one of the few directors that uses the camera almost as in a different way to achieve comedic timing than just editing.
Yeah.
And directing actors, obviously, but that movie is incredibly emotional compared to his other films. The other ones are all emotional, but this one really delivers it at the end to where when you are sucked out at that moment, like you talked about, yeah, that was the one that emotionally hit me the hardest. Just, it's one of those things where just the passage of time kind of hits you hard. We've talked about it several times on this podcast before, where that hits you harder the older you get, and every time I watch it, it still gets me. Of just like he's going on, like kind of clinging on to all he has left in this old life, and his wife is dead and has been for some time, but we spent this whole time trying to like get to know how that happened, and it's beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Life ending is beautiful, just like in The Irishman. All right, move on. For time's sake, Marcus, what about your TV show of the decade?
What a transition to his TV show of the decade.
This is one we love and talk about a lot, so I'm excited.
When I was thinking about my favorite TV shows of the decade, I did not think I would end up on this one. And it was between this and Community, because Community is masterful.
Community's on the spreadsheet, guys.
That's what you have written down.
I know
He's gonna
Community's
throw
on
us
the
a curveball. I'm so
spreadsheet.
stoked. Oh, I'm ready.
I know you guys
Now,
prepared hours
yeah.
to talk about Community, all right, but I want to talk about Nathan for You today.
Oh, cool.
You son of a bitch. I watched 2 seasons of Community.
I absolutely love Nathan for You. I think Nathan for You is one of the funniest television shows ever made. And I never thought I'd say that about like a reality TV show, but just the fact that it's a parody of a reality TV show that's also a reality TV show, and because of that, it makes it more real. I don't know how.
Can you give a synopsis of what this one is, just because it's slightly less known?
Nathan for You. Nathan is a businessman who he goes around and helps small businesses. But
He went to business school in Canada where he got really
he got
good
super
grades.
good grades. But the catch of the show is that he uses the most outrageous, ridiculous methods to help these businesses, help in quotations. And and people go along with it.
So it's like Restaurant Rescue, but for whatever business he goes to it with tons of satire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like making shit-flavored yogurt to get customers in the door.
It is brilliant. And for me, I think the reason I love it so much, and a lot of its humor comes from just kind of showing people's real nature. Like, it displays human nature in the most unique way. And Nathan Fielder, to me, is like the ballsiest man alive. He puts himself in the most ridiculous situations, and he stays in, I guess, stays in character of you know, his awkward persona. But then there's also this weird storyline kind of weaved into the show, how he like really wants human connection, and you have returning characters coming back, like this private investigator that he works with, and Santa Claus. And I love it. I love everything about the show.
I've literally only seen one episode, so that's
Are you serious?
complete news
Have you
to
only
me.
seen the Gas
Yep.
episode? Oh my god!
I think I saw the
Gas episode
pilot.
is
One of
so
my
good.
favorites.
I've never even
Yeah.
heard of this before, and this is your top of like. I feel terrible right now.
No, do not, because it is kind of like a neat show, and a lot of people, like my girlfriend, she hates the show because it makes her so uncomfortable. Because there's so many uncomfortable situations, but it's so funny and it's so genuine. You know, the reactions and the things people are doing.
Yes.
That's cool. All right, Tyler, we're going to move on to, or Tyler McKinley specifically. What's your wild card?
I thought really hard about what I was going to do for this. Because
He's taking his shirt off.
Which streaming site's it going to be?
No, because I mean, like, obviously a lot of things happened to me this decade and things like I talk about with you guys pretty frequently. You know, I got married, I had a kid, and I was like, that's boring. I don't want to talk about that. So I still was having a hard time. I'm still embarrassed that I landed on what I'm landing on.
Oh
but
my gosh, I can't
we're
wait.
going to talk about it. So I don't even know like how to title it really without sounding like pretentious and stupid. I'm going to start out with this. It's kind of like fitness and health, okay?
Okay.
I went to an LDS mission to Louisiana, and when I was told I was going to Louisiana, everyone told me the same thing. When they heard that, they're like, "You're gonna get so fat," and I was like, "Shit, I'm gonna get fat," and I didn't know what that even meant. I didn't know what the definition of fat was. Like, I still don't, but so basically, I was so paranoid about that but I didn't really like think about it at first until about 2 weeks in, and like really didn't have anyone to check my eating habits at all, really, because I was eating. Basically, I would have a chocolate Costco muffin every day, and then I'd follow it with like a sleeve Oreo chaser, just like a whole sleeve. And those were my meals. And so when I started living with other people besides my parents for the first time, I learned you're not supposed to go through a whole jar of peanut butter in 3 days. And
You are supposed to cook chicken at 3 a.m. and set up fire alarm.
that was much later. But anyway, yeah. So like, I realized something was like I was eating horribly for my body, and so like I went the complete opposite extreme. Started eating nothing, and it was just many years of me trying to figure out like what you're supposed to do as a human being. That no one really had any good information because there's so much information out there on it, right? And I lost a lot of weight. I lost 40 pounds, and not in a healthy way.
Wow.
I never felt good. I always felt horrible. And it wasn't until about, honestly, like it kind of started getting better after I got married. I started like getting a little more sense of it, but still not there. And then I randomly just like looked up how to do a certain workout one day, and it led me to this site. I actually don't know the name of this. I just had it bookmarked. It's like Legion Athletics, I think. But it's this guy who wrote this book, and the book is the main thing I wanted to talk about because it like really has kind of changed. I feel great now.
You look great.
Oh well, thank you.
I mean, as someone
Tyler
who tries
does in
a lot
fact
of like
look
workouts
great.
and diets. Like I genuinely mean that.
Yeah, thank you. No, I'm happy with where I'm at now, and I feel great. I feel stupid talking about this, to be honest. It's like a weird thing that I don't talk about with people. Mm-hmm. It's just something that's very personal that I've done on my own, so it's weird talking about it.
No, I think this is really cool.
So because of that workout, I learned that this guy wrote this book. It's called Bigger, Leaner, Stronger by Mike Matthews. Michael Matthews, I think, is how he's titled as the author. If you look through all the chapters, you're going to be like disappointed at their headings because they sound like clickbaity articles. But when they actually like dive into them, they're like really helpful because it's like the 10 myths about weight loss and like shit like that. But the things he goes into are really informative, and the main thing it's all about is first, your diet is essentially you can eat stuff. You can eat all kinds of foods. The main thing you just got to do is make sure you're getting this is not a mystery concept to anyone, but it's one people just don't want to accept. It's if you want to gain weight, whether like muscle wise, you have to work out and you have to eat more calories than you're burning. If you want to get skinnier, you eat less calories and work out. And he's like, any diet fad that you've heard of people that like have success, whether it's keto or whatever it is, those may actually work. But the reason they're working is because that person, if it's keto, that person was eating a shit ton of carbs before, and now they're limited to the amount of carbs they can intake. They're eating less calories than they usually were. And so that's why they're doing intermittent fasting, same concept. It's because it's still following that. Those are hard things to keep going for a long period of time. You can't sustain that for a long time. Mm-hmm. You can do it for a year, but try doing it for 5, Like it's super hard. And that's kind of what I ran into. I thought, carbs were the problem, and I like cut those out for a big portion of my life. So I didn't know how much protein you're supposed to get if you want to gain muscle. Holy shit. I was like, days that I ever broke 100, I was like, I ate way too much protein. You're supposed to eat 1 gram of protein per body weight, like pound of body weight.
That is
so I have to eat
insane.
So when I started this, I was 175, so I had to eat 175 grams of protein a day, which is hard. You have to find the right sources of stuff to do that. And I've kind of found it. But I don't want to spend too much time on it, but he goes into a lot of detail about like, the book's nice because he'll tell you like a principle, and then he'll like give you a list of studies and summarize them. And like, he'll provide you like, if you want to go research those studies more in depth about why science kind of backs that up. And he's like, there's multiple studies where these scientists spent months just buying stuff from the gas station and just counted their macros of protein, carbs, and fats, and they were able to get shredded on just eating like Pop-Tarts and shit because they got all those things in there. He's like, I don't recommend you do that. Like, he's like, that's really bad for like your organs and shit. But like,
if you want to write a cool book, you should.
Shredded by Pop-Tarts.
He's like, but you can totally do that. So like now that changed everything for me, because like now I'm eating what I want. When I don't know if you noticed when I lived with you, but like when we went out to eat, I did
notice
get anything ever. I get whatever I want now.
Yeah.
And it's just as long as I balance it out. And I also, the other part of it is like half of it's like the diet, half of it's like how you work out. And like that was also something I was missing out on. Was like, I'm working out my workouts are way too long. I'm trying to cram too much in, but I'm lifting too light. You have to lift heavier weight, less reps, and less amount of time for the day. My workouts went from like an hour and a half to 40 minutes. And way easier to do, mentally a lot easier to do.
Yeah.
I'm really uncomfortable talking about this.
No, that's great.
No, it's fascinating.
But yeah, it's a really good book. And the great thing is, like, I don't even follow it exactly. Like, if I followed it exactly, I would be like super shredded and huge. Like, I don't want to get there. I don't need to get there. I am following just a portion of it, and it's like something I don't have to worry about now. It's like something I don't think about. I just feel healthier, and that I would recommend it to anyone who, like, especially with like the new year starting. People are always starting crazy fat things before you go like into something extreme. Give it a try. He's got one, like the Bigger, Leaner, Stronger is like if you want like a more stereotypical like prime male physique or whatever. There's one that's Thinner, Leaner, Stronger, I think is what it's called, for a more feminine look. Whatever you're going for, check it out, give it a read. Even go on that website. I think it's Legion Athletics. Look for any articles that are done by Mike Matthews. They're all
Matthews. Okay. I was going to say, what's it? Yeah.
It's really good, really informative.
Cool. Awesome.
That's awesome. I was always wondering, because you have always seemed really fit, but you've never talked about it, and you're not a huge sports guy. Like, you like the Utah Jazz, but you are a big video game person, and so I was like, turns out Tyler's like secretly a beast, and now I know.
Is Mike Matthews? Does he go by Scooby by chance?
No.
Okay.
I not that I know of.
There's another. I know there's another fitness person who is well respected, and I think his nickname is Scooby. Which, yeah,
I mean,
I've seen him
maybe.
mentioned before, and I thought that name sounded familiar.
He doesn't
I wasn't
mention that
sure.
in his book at all.
Okay.
I'll say that. Like maybe his Instagram or
It
something.
could be
is kinda-
completely different people. I
Going by
was
that.
just curious.
But also the nice thing is if you do want to like follow his workouts exactly, you do probably need to go to a gym. I don't like going to the gym. So I like the stuff you see, like I have my workout stuff down here, but this is all stuff that I've kind of like gathered over long periods of time. Mm-hmm. You can honestly, as long as you have dumbbells and a pull-up bar, you can do a good chunk of it. Yeah.
All right, next up, Mitch, what is your television or movie event of the year? What a dick.
I didn't realize that until
I mean, we
way
all
too
knew
late.
that before, but it was just like, wow.
Oh, man.
Now we know you know it, and I don't know if it makes it better or worse. I don't know.
I'll never speak in the third person again. Mitch will never speak in the third person again. Okay, I'll make this pretty quick because Tyler and I have both recommended this. It's Fleabag, and I feel like Fleabag is right now entering the main consciousness. I think it just won at the Golden Globes. Phoebe won for both the best comedy show and best acting, and that's really cool to see it recognized. It was recognized at the Emmys as well. It kind of has moved into the mainstream consciousness, and that's great because it was a little bit of a hipster thing, and I don't mean to do that because I actually liked a lot of media this year. Like when I looked back on it, I was like, oh, I enjoyed a lot of TV and movies, and I might have even enjoyed some things more than Fleabag, but Fleabag had the combination of enjoyment along with I was blown away by the effectiveness of the storytelling. So Fleabag is about Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Literally, the character's Fleabag, and she breaks the fourth wall all the time. She has an unhealthy relationship with men. She's done some really horrendous things. There's kind of some fun twists within the show where you kind of get reveals about the relationships and why she's in the emotional state and position she is. Season 2, which she almost didn't do. This actually started as a one-woman stage show, and she still does it. And she stopped doing it now, but it's like a bucket list thing for me. I'd love to see her do it.
They've been broadcasting it to theaters and stuff too.
Yeah.
There's like special events.
They did like a Fathom event of it. But season 2, and by the way, for those wondering, I hope there's no season 3. I truly do. I want it to be done. This is what we needed from this character. In season 2, she kind of falls for a priest, and this priest is played by Andrew Scott. And it is unlike any other courtship or relationship or will they, won't they. But there is a will they, won't they. There is he's a priest, and he's a priest specifically. I don't know if there's a specific faith to it, if it is Catholic, but he is like celibate, and he's not to engage in those types of relationships. And to see him be torn and to see her go through this, just fascinating. They're both so talented, and she. I'm going to give one major thing away. We kind of went into saying whatever we talk about is we're going to be able to spoil, but if you don't want to know something key, just skip 30 seconds. But as she breaks the fourth wall for the first couple of seasons, there's a moment when he notices her do it a couple of times. And it's breaking another wall of storytelling, and it is magical. And then the way it then brings in and envelopes the relationship. And I'm not the most woke or enlightened. Like, she's this British lady and she's hilarious and she's fun, and I'm not saying like I grew as a human because of it, but I felt things and I learned, and like I had such an enjoyment watching these characters go through this, and just thought it's 6 episodes, which a lot of English shows are just these 6-episode half hours, like Catastrophe, which Tyler told me about this year, which I really loved. And like those two are both writers as well as Phoebe. Like, I want to see what they write and what they act in. And so Fleabag was definitely it was sensational. And I think while there were a lot of good things that came out this year, and it's barely the length of a movie too, a long movie. So that is definitely the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, I think one of the other things about that show is so the second season for me, I didn't watch it until the second season was out, and the second season to me is by far just incredible. The first season is great and I really love, but there will probably be a point in the first season where you're like, I don't know if I like this character,
which is important because
it
you
is
want
very
unlikable
important,
who tell you things.
And I will say the that show, it may not have maybe like set a goal to be a better person, but just that the exercise of really being able to feel empathy for a character that I can't really relate to on a number of levels was such an incredible experience this year. And the thing, a landing that a lot of people don't stick, I feel like. And 100%. So it's a phenomenal show. I loved it.
Love Fleabag. By the way, the only person who I've ever heard say is season 1, and season 1 is our introduction, and she is deplorable, and it's interesting, and it creates this character, so it is great. But Sam Esmail, who he did Homecoming, and he's mostly known for Mr. Robot, he defends season 1 to the death, and it's actually really interesting to hear her say it, and it made my next rewatch really enriched.
Cool.
I'm interested to try it because I did watch the trailer because I was trying to catch up with what you guys were going to talk about as much as I could over the Christmas break. And I watched the trailer for it, and it didn't do anything to win me over. But the fact that you now say it's 2 seasons, I'm a lot more inclined to actually give it a shot.
2 seasons, 12 episodes total, and she is unlikable.
Yeah, and it really is like the performances in it are incredible. Brett Gelman is just a fucking gross ass human being, and Olivia Colman,
who's really taking over the freaking world with The Crown and The Favorite. Like, she was just on this little British show with this girl, and she's. Like, there's not many characters you like, but man, they're fun to watch.
yeah, they're really good.
Cool. Let's go. Riley, what was your wild card for the decade?
My wild card is Vine.
For those of you who are under the age of 22,
it's like TikTok,
but only 6 seconds.
But so much better. I feel like Vine, I kind of discovered it. I was nannying in Philadelphia. So I had a lot of time on my hands just chilling. So
you decided to fill it with 6-second videos.
Yeah.
But you find out you can do a lot of them.
Yeah, you can watch so many of them. And so I just started watching these Vines, and I was like, this is the dumbest but greatest thing I've ever found. And then my family came out to visit me, and within 20 minutes of them being there, I was downstairs with my little brother, and we were just crying. We were laughing so hard to these stupid videos. And I just feel like they kind of changed, internet humor. They really just, they had such an impact. And they still have an impact, even though Vine is gone. You can watch Vine compilations, and conversations are filled with Vine references. And
I thought Twitter,
I can't tell you how many times, at the office, I just hear people, anytime it's Halloween, I always will hear someone say, it's freaking bad. I love Halloween.
Yeah, I love Vine, and I love what it did, and I think it was a good time. And so many people that started on Vine, are famous now, whether they're YouTubers or Shawn Mendes started on Vine, and it's crazy to see the impact it had.
Yeah. It's funny because I never had Vine on my phone. I never downloaded Vine. My entire relationship with Vine is through Vine compilations on YouTube.
Yeah, me too.
Which for years that was all my recommended videos on YouTube where we're like, have you seen this Vine compilation? Oh look, this guy says he has Vine. You haven't seen.
They all just try to get more creative with the title. Vine's that'll butter your biscuit at midnight.
Oh yeah, that was my favorite run of Vines.
There's Vine remixes. It is truly exponentially influence creativity, and it's just funny that Twitter couldn't find a way to keep that and monetize it, but TikTok, this giant Chinese company, is here because of Vine. In my opinion, it's partly because of Instagram, but it's the perfect way to say you have to be really creative. And I remember just as a kid people saying think out of the box, and then now I love the idea of putting someone within a creative bind and seeing how they make it even better.
Right, putting constraints on your creativity can actually make you more creative.
Yeah,
and it's I love Vine, and I remember I had an English teacher who introduced our class to Vine. We had to do a project with Vine.
That's awesome.
In the early days. But then it just kind of exploded, and I love how some of the simplest, dumbest Vines are some of the funniest.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite Vine, it's in a few compilations, but it's this British girl saying, I'm in me mom's car. The mom saying, get out my car. And the girl saying, oh, it's by far my favorite Vine. This also shows you how quickly technology moves. Because I dated a girl who's like 4 years younger than me. She loved Vine, but now people 2 years younger than her, like Vine was like something. It's like MySpace had a lot longer life for us than like Vine's out of the consciousness. But she's always like, "Do you know any Vines?" And I'm like, "I know one Vine." And she showed me the little girl who was like, "Freaking bats! I like beef."
I smell like beef.
But the weirdest little things.
roommates.
We can do this for a fucking hour. Easily.
Riley, real quick, what is your favorite Vine?
There's so many, but that little girl, when she's like, "I'm a grandmother, I'm 16," it like kills me. I think it's so funny.
All right, everyone go around and just say the first line that comes to their mind.
I already did go to
Well, the one that changed it for me that really like got me into Vine, it's dumb, but it's the one. It's a monkey in a cage, and like a guy's like waving a banana, but there's this guy with a lisp doing the voiceover, and he's like, "I don't even want that banana." It's like, "Just kidding." And he like grabs the banana, like whoop,
Marcus
obliterates this banana.
Look at all those chickens.
That's a good one.
The one that is constantly stuck in my mind is just, "Hey, look, free Shavaka."
Damn it, that was the one I was going to say.
Wow.
It's like funnier when other people say it.
I have to go with the, look at that dog. There's a dog in that car. Hey, you. Hey, dog.
Let's just stop.
What are you doing in that car?
I gotta tell you guys, this is the perfect segue. I'm super stoked for this change. Justin, will you tell us about your pop culture thing of the decade?
Pop culture, we got to go way back for this, right?
Oh my eyes.
So, right in line with the 6-second humor, I guess. I don't know. We have an entire multi-year experience in Breaking Bad. Oh yeah, it's not very funny either.
It has its moments.
It's got its moments, bitch.
Okay. I'm readjusting levels right now as I'm doing this. Everything is spiked red on this, on all the levels. Yeah. Okay. So Breaking Bad. Man, where to start? I watched Breaking Bad after Breaking Bad. I want to say it was the last season was airing when I started watching Breaking Bad. Okay. And I think that was 2015 maybe. I don't remember exactly when it was.
Yeah, it's probably a little earlier than that, but yeah, it was around there.
Are we looking at Vines
You have
now?
a Vine coming in.
I just thought of him saying the free Shavaka. I have to leave. Okay, I'm good. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Now that I think about it, Breaking Bad might have actually been finished by the time I started watching it, and I was catching up on Netflix.
Oh, cool.
So as they were coming to Netflix, that was kind of when I started watching. So I should have done a little bit more research on this because I think Breaking Bad also started in the last decade too.
Yeah,
I think it started airing in like 2009, I believe.
8 or 9.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah.
But it finished up this most recent decade.
It had its impact this decade. It counts.
Yeah, and as far as why I'm choosing it as like my top TV experience from the decade, it was my first experience ever watching a show from the start to the finish. It was my first experience with TV characters that I actually cared for. Like watching a TV show that had a complete story that wasn't just episodic or like a weekend thing. Like I'm thinking of the shows I watched when I was a kid, like Boy Meets World or Home Improvement or like those kinds of shows.
Right.
This was the first show that I ever saw that kind of fit that definition, I guess. I know that obviously it's a pretty popular show. There were a lot of people who watched Breaking Bad. For me, based on where I was in my life at the time, watching Breaking Bad was kind of a little bit of a rebellious thing for me too, because the kind of media that I consumed was Breaking Bad was like the hardest media that I was watching or let myself watch, and it also coincided with a time in my life where I was kind of like wondering about a lot of other like religious things, and so Breaking Bad at the time was like kind of my entrance into making a moral choice for myself. Almost like, it sounds really stupid, and
No, I
not at all.
totally relate
Not
to
at
that,
all. Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
I think
sure.
a lot of us can.
yeah. So yeah, I fell in love with the characters. The acting was, at the time, I like looking back on it, I thought it was fantastic. I cried watching this when an important character dies, and I had never experienced that before from a TV show. Being able to experience something that was like such a pop culture experience with everybody else was a big deal too. Even though I was like a little bit late to it, I felt like I was there while it was still in the conversation, which was really cool, which I had never really experienced that before either. I think Game of Thrones, I almost chose Game of Thrones as my experience for this, but yeah, that's not, I don't feel like that was unique enough. I don't know.
Well, I feel
Breaking
like,
Bad happened, and then Game of Thrones happened for me, and like I feel like Breaking Bad was kind of like the precursor to the Game of Thrones experience that so many of us had.
Yeah. Well, and I feel
yeah.
like the internet coming in as a big player, you know, I mean, we have stories of the internet has always played a part for those conversations, but for it to be like at a point where those conversations were happening and literally everyone was on the internet now.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like Breaking Bad was that show, I feel like, that
Yeah.
was there. So, yeah, I totally get that.
It was also it was strange because even though it was such a pop culture experience and so big, I didn't really have anybody to talk to about it either, because none of my friends at the time, my close friends, really watched it, or if they did, they didn't say that they did, because it was a little taboo. And like I tried to Gwen, like I tried to get Gwen to watch it. I've tried to get Gwen to watch it a few times, and I think at this point it's just too big of a task right now to jump into it, and I think that's really the only thing that's holding her back. And so she didn't want to watch it at the time when I was watching it, so it was like this kind of solo experience for me, and then like millions of people around the world too. But in my own circle of friends, that was really, I felt like I was really the only one who was doing it, which was really strange because there are a lot of hard emotions to deal with as you go through that show. And so I processed this entire thing on my own, basically, and that it was a really formative media experience for me. Like that, I think watching Breaking Bad has really kind of shaped how I watch TV now, like kind of my expectations, or what, like especially in a story, I expect a certain level of quality in my media. And Breaking Bad was kind of the entryway into that critical thinking of TV for me.
cool.
Yeah.
Breaking Bad is just really freaking good, and it's extremely influential in the amount of anti-heroes we saw come into that might be finally on the downturn, but it was so influential in that way. It's influential to binge culture because it was a week-to-week show, and I loved watching the last. I only saw the last season and a half live, and I loved the anticipation again. I just hadn't felt that to that level in a long time. But even binging it, talk about having you press play on the next episode. They had some incredible.
That was that was the first show that I ever binged, and I think I watched the last 3 seasons in like 2 days.
Nice.
Wow. Which
some people think that is a Netflix show. And I
Right,
know that's happened to a handful of shows, but Breaking Bad might have been the first huge one. Like,
It's weird that was on AMC.
poor AMC, who had like Mad Men and Breaking Bad, two of the great shows back to back.
Walking
and
Dead was
Walking
going at the
Dead.
same time too. I guess it still is, but
Yeah.
Walking Dead
Huge
is
hit
still
record.
going.
I think so.
All
It's
right.
just sad.
If you want to talk to my mom about it, she's still watching.
She loves it.
She loves it for some reason.
Anybody else have any very brief thoughts on?
I will say I have some very specific experiences tied to Breaking Bad. One of them is trying to get to Philadelphia to visit Riley and getting a buddy pass on JetBlue and then having to take 9 different flights to get from Salt Lake City to
No
Philadelphia,
way.
like overnight. And the only thing that kept me sane was luckily I had downloaded like the next 4 episodes of Breaking Bad and I could watch it not on the shitty airport Wi-Fi. Is the only thing that kept me sane. And I remember there's a very important moment in Breaking Bad where I'm just going to spoil a little bit. It's not like I don't think that the details are going to be super spoilery, but Jesse is about to get killed, and then the people who are going to kill Jesse are run over in a car.
Yeah.
And Walter White gets out and just says the word "run" as the shot cuts to black. And I remember being in an airport in Boston, seeing that, and I just remember like. My intake of breath was loud enough that a family like 10 feet away was like, what the hell is that guy doing? And I was just like, kept my eyes on my computer until they looked away. But yeah, it's full of moments like that. And
the scene, what's the restaurant owner's name?
Gus Fring.
Gus, when he slits the guy's throat, that is going to stay with me for forever. And it's not. There is a brutality about it that is shocking, but the setup to that, his character, and just these are moments like I think this show is going to be the show that I remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, it's really great.
All right, Tyler Harris, best thing of the year.
Okay, best thing of the year. My favorite movie of the year.
Don't you dare change from what's on the
So
spreadsheet.
it's really hard, so I'm going to change it.
I apologized already.
I'd like
Joker
to talk
was so
about,
special.
I'd like to talk about fighting with my family. Just kidding. I really want to talk about fighting with my family, but it is on my top 10,
Shouts.
and it is
Me
not
too.
getting dethroned. But the movie I decided I wanted to talk about is actually Last Black Man in San Francisco, which is a really weird movie to me, but it is one of those experiences I treasure because it's a movie that I just felt so much during, and after I walked out of it, I couldn't explain why. And I thought it was like, maybe I was just really sad that day. But I watched it again a few weeks ago, and I felt all those same things. And just kind of as a pitch, or just kind of what the movie is, it's about this guy who lives in San Francisco, and there is a house there that his grandfather built. He believes his grandfather built in the, I want to say 20s or something. I can't remember exactly when, but his grandfather built from the ground up that now this other couple lives in. But he has this dream of one day moving back into that house and finding his place in this city. And in reality, I mean, the movie is about that, but it's also about this much larger concept of just finding a place to belong, and feeling worth something in that place. But I think the biggest thing for me with this movie is that it skirts the line of realism and fantasy in a way that I really appreciate. The opening shot of this movie, the opening 5 minutes of this movie are some of the most just moving and like powerful and disorienting things I've seen in a movie this year. That opening shot where you just see this little girl standing like on the banks of this bay looking up at something, and then it's revealed it's this man in a hazmat suit at this polluted bay, and you're just seeing all these guys cleaning up, and then this street preacher just yelling, like, and it's not a close-up, you are sat across the street from this man just yelling about this cleanup, which then cuts to our two main characters, whose names I'm gonna have to look up, but basically discussing if this man is prepared, whatever. But then goes into this very like moving musical moment where they're skateboarding across the city to go to this house. And
how they're doing that is impressive.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Two people on one
If you ever
skateboard.
tried to do that before, it's very difficult.
San Francisco too, going bombing down huge hills.
Yeah, it's amazing. Jimmy Falls and Montgomery Allen. Those are the names of the characters. But yeah, and just the way that movie unfolds, it eventually ends with that. It doesn't end, but it eventually they end up living in that house while it is between owners, and basically making, he makes that house into what he wants to be, and the whole time Montgomery is writing this play that ends up being about him and the last black man in San Francisco. But again, it's one of those movies. It's for me, it just hit me on so many levels. It's visually beautiful. the performances are really incredible, and it's actually a really personal story. The guy who plays
like
Jimmy
partially a
Falls in the
true
movie,
story.
yeah, it's a lot based on his experience, and the guy who made it is his really good friend. Kind of a stand-in for Montgomery in that movie, I think. And it is just a really moving story about wanting to connect to your past, not being able to, and not knowing kind of where you fit in. But it's just a really, really beautiful movie that I think especially in this year, there are a lot of movies that are people telling stories that no one else can tell. They're telling their own stories, and Last Black Man in San Francisco for me was just so beautifully done, and definitely is up there with stuff this year that we saw, like The Farewell, which is also a very personal story, or Honey Boy. I think those all are great examples of just like such personal stories that people chose to tell. But yeah, I loved it, and people should definitely check it out, because I don't know a ton of people that saw it. You know what I mean? I know you saw it in theaters,
I
right,
did.
Marcus?
Yeah,
Okay.
it is. I definitely agree with you. Like once you start the movie and you get into it, you suddenly realize, oh wow, this is going to be unlike anything I've ever experienced before, because it is so unique in so many different ways, and how it's shot, and how it's written, and how many different sequences play out, and it evokes a lot of feelings that you don't really expect.
Yeah.
It's very touching. It is. You described it way more articulately than I am, but it's very personal, personally touching on many levels. It reminds me a lot of the relationship I have with my brothers, in a way. And man, I need to see that again.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
I think the other thing to note is it's one of the few soundtracks I've listened to a lot this year. It's got a really cool jazzy, like brassy, I guess brassy is the better word, brassy feeling soundtrack, but it feels very modern and like dreamy too. And the cover of that man singing If You're Going to San Francisco was in my top 5 songs on Spotify this year.
It's like heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Like, in a way that I didn't think that song could be.
Yeah, it's really, really beautiful.
So we just spent the past week in Newark, which is south of San Francisco, like 15, 20 miles maybe, and we drove past, and we were driving through the bay on the way to get there. Cool. And while I got like super sick this past week and ended up not spending as much time. Like my family went to see my wife's family, and I just hung out at Granny's house for the whole week basically because I was sick. But I watched there was a documentary that showed up on Reddit that I saw that it was called, I think it's called Bridges, or Bridge maybe. Okay. It's a documentary about the Golden Gate Bridge, and specifically relating to how many people commit suicide by jumping off of the Golden Gate Bridge every year. And it was shot in, I think, 2004, which is kind of interesting to look back at that era, and the people that are talking about mental health and everything, and just kind of hear even how much things have changed in the last 2 decades since then. Yeah. But I had just recently watched Last Black Man in San Francisco as well, and the ending of that can kind of be interpreted as almost a suicide. You could, I think the director has said that that's not how he thinks of it, but he obviously doesn't care how people interpret it. Yeah. So yeah, just like the emotions that movie made me feel about a city and about belonging and everything, and then watching this documentary about suicide as well. Like there's some really heavy stuff going on in my mind lately. I mean, it's really good to empathize and to try and put yourself in the shoes of these people. And like, I think Last Black Man in San Francisco is important to get in that kind of a mindset of just trying to understand, if you don't have a place where you, like, if you feel like you belong somewhere, like if you feel like you put down roots or whatever, there's a lot of people who don't feel that way, and people all around us don't feel that way. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great note about the ending too, is like kind of talking about the more fantastical elements. Like it does feel like a very mythic tale, and you kind of realize at the end that I feel like you might be able to take that whole movie and say that it's told from the perspective of Montgomery about Jimmy. And yeah, it's really great. You should definitely check it out. And that's all. It's a great movie.
It's on Prime.
Love it. Yeah, watch it on Amazon Prime.
It's great.
All right. Justin, what's your wild card for us?
Wild card for the decade. Another event that made me cry, which is kind of funny thinking about it now. I watched the SpaceX launch of their Falcon Heavy booster when they launched the Tesla into space. And this had been something that I had been looking forward to for quite a while. And when it happened, they live streamed it, which I think is just fucking awesome that we get to see all this shit totally live now.
Yeah.
So they're playing Starman by David Bowie as they're live streaming this, and you see this completely autonomous rocket ship blow, like it blasts off, and then there's a car flying through outer space, and the boosters come back and they land all by themselves at the same time on the rocket pads, and like I don't know how to really put into words the emotions that I felt at that time, but like that was one of the most optimistic things that I have experienced in my life ever, I think. And it's like there's so much that goes into this in my mind. Like I have a lot of fears and a lot of worries about my life specifically. I worry about the human race. I worry about our planet. There are things that I care about, and like to distill all of these experiences, all these emotions into that moment where I got to see Elon Musk, who has said we need to take measures to like protect our future, and to see like this very symbolic step of sending a fucking car into space. Like, but the fact that they did it, the fact that he said they were going to do it, their team has done it, and I know everything's complicated and he's probably a terrible boss, and I don't know, there's lots of issues, but it happened, and this is a step forward in the future of protecting our existence, like in case of some major event that happens. Like he wants to be able to get to Mars, and obviously that's really optimistic right now, but these are the steps that are being taken into a future that we all kind of want and hope for, and like a perpetual existence, I guess. So yeah, optimism, that's something that I don't get to feel very much, I feel like, and that moment really did it for me. I was at work, I watched the live stream, and I just ended up like weeping at my desk while all these people are walking around, and it's just, yeah, I didn't really want to talk to any of them. Like, you guys, nobody understands how this is making me feel. Like, space is cool, but that's not why I'm crying.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
It's a big accomplishment. It's interesting to be able to see something. I mean, with current events that we're not going to go into, I have been thinking a lot more about just being able to witness things live like that.
Yeah.
I mean, for good and bad, 'cause I do remember even just back before all the streaming era of just, you know, everything with Iraq that happened. And I remember when we invaded Iraq, I was coming off of a plane, and the first thing I saw was this big TV with just bullets flying. And I was like, what the like, that was, I was like 13 or whatever. Like, that was so jarring for me. And then now it's like, we can witness such crazy events. Like, I've been thinking about a lot this week of like, even things like, as like, this sounds stupid to compare those things, but in my mind, it's like, the odds of me ever seeing a duck wearing a top hat, like waddling around a living room and like doing something outrageous is like, that's something that like has like probably only happened in that scenario that I got to see. Like that, and it's like, that's so bonkers, like crazy shit, like, and like everything from that to like just nuts stuff people do with their free time, like Nitro Circus type people who are just doing crazy stuff and they record it, put it online. I get to see it, and it's all while I'm on the toilet, you know. Like,
all of it. That's the only place I see it.
Like, it just becomes so almost loses its value, but also like is a cool thing because it like is spread so much further. And I think SpaceX is definitely one of those things because it's something that like was only reserved for NASA for such a long time. That is now branching out, and with like with all the things that NASA brought from their missions and everything that affected the entire human race just through technology, even if it was accidental, is now being pursued by multiple people, multiple groups, and to be able to experience it live and not have to like go to a launch site to see, I totally understand that. I'm also, but like, you said it wasn't why you cried, but like, I'm also like, I fucking love space.
Right.
Like, I think it's one of the most fascinating, terrifying things,
Yeah.
and I can't get enough of it.
When my daughter tells me, like, I'm going to go to space, like, I mean, you always say, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but, like, she might actually get to go, like, I might actually get to go to space now. Like, this is pretty sweet. And, like, to be alive during this part of our history is a really, really cool thing. Like, we always, like, man, I wish I could have seen such and such. Like, I wish I could have experienced this from our history, or I wish I could see what happens in the future. I wish I could experience that. But, like, being able to say, like, I got to see this thing happen that I personally feel like is a really important thing that has happened in human history. That's, I don't know, that's a really special experience.
Yeah.
For all the negativity of how connected we are because of the internet and technology, it's also, you know, there's the opposite of Black Mirror. And I think that's important because we're always sometimes down like, oh, I wish I would have lived in simpler times. Yeah. But we also get some incredible
But
stuff.
then we also wouldn't have gotten Vine or SpaceX. Like, arguably the two most important things the internet have given us.
Yeah.
I wanted to be in my prime in the 20s or 50s, but damn am I glad I had Vine.
It's very easy to focus on the negative a lot of times, but you know, when you stop and you truly do have to make an effort to kind of be an optimist and look at the good things. It truly is awe-inspiring, like what the day and age we live in, and the world is a weird place, and we are living in a really, really weird time, and you just gotta kind of embrace it. You have to embrace all of it.
Like, I still don't understand how planes stay up, but I'm so excited about them.
Magic, you idiot.
2-second segue here. The older I get, the more terrified I get of going on planes because I understand how they work. I'm like, how the fuck are we not?
What if the air turns off?
I think I fly a lot, and so I'm a little more numb to it. And so when I met with someone who I know travels quite a bit, and we were just flying to Denver, and I was like, they're like, oh, I get scared at every plane. I'm like, what? So and it's really common.
Yeah. Like, you look out the window, it's just like the only thing that's making you go up in the air is just that tilt of the tilt of the wing. And
listen, if you ever get nervous on a plane, you just take your shoes off, ball your feet up. That's a Die Hard reference. Am I the only one in this room?
We've gone through this. Like,
oh my gosh, I forgot. This is the most afraid I've ever felt.
Actually, there's that show on Netflix called like The Movies That Made Us or whatever.
Yeah.
like you're making a sexual reference.
No. Well, I mean, John McClane is 97% a sexual being. Yes, absolutely.
99%. Anyway, I watched a documentary on Die Hard before I actually saw it, so it's on my list. Next Christmas movie. Anyway, transitioning to something also happy. Riley's favorite popular culture thing of the decade.
Close us out.
This was a really hard decision to make, and I was kind of looking at a list of movies and TV shows. And this movie stuck out to me. I hadn't watched it for a long time, and I was like, I think that one might be the one. It's called About Time. I'll tell you what it is. I hadn't said that yet.
You were building the tension because I actually like you had two options on the spreadsheet. Anyway, go ahead.
So it's called About Time. It came out in 2013.
This is the one with Justin Timberlake, right? Where
No,
they have the
that's
time on their
Time.
arms. Okay, right.
Same time, yeah.
Also, like
that movie.
That's a good bad movie.
My little brother loves that movie.
Which one?
Josh.
Oh, Gordon.
I do too.
text
I'm on that train. All right.
So this movie, like, on paper, it looks like your stereotypical, like, romantic comedy. He's in this family, when the men turn 18, they can time travel, but they can only go back within their own lives. And they can't go forward at all, except to, like, jump back to where they were when they went back, I guess. That was a continuity thing that people talked about.
Time travel's messy. We know that at this point.
Yeah. And so you kind of get to watch this kid named Tim kind of figure out how he's going to use that in his life, and he decides to get a girlfriend with it. And so you kind of watch him, and you watch him meet Rachel McAdams, and then their relationship starts and everything. And then the second half of the movie feels really different than the first half, because you kind of notice like the background things going on within his own family, like his sister Kit Kat especially, her like story throughout the whole movie I think is the reason why it like resonates with me so much, because you just kind of see her in the background, and when he moves to London the first little while you kind of see her there a lot, and then she's not there for like a chunk of the movie. And yeah, her life has been a lot harder than his, and at one point he tries to fix stuff that was going on with her to make it so she never met her like abusive boyfriend, and then it changes, like his child isn't the same kid when he goes back, and so he has to kind of decide to fix it, and then just kind of help her through all of her shit, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. It's just really interesting to watch him kind of be pretty reckless with the time travel in the beginning to go fix like tiny things, and then he kind of realizes that he can't fix everything, and by the end of the movie he's like, I'm not doing it anymore because I would rather just like live every day like it was going to be my last day, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I think this is the first thing I saw Domhnall Gleeson in too, and it made me really like him because he's great, despite being a shit character in Star Wars and in the second Peter Rabbit movie. What the fuck? But anyways, get a new agent, Domhnall. Anyways, but yeah, I think that this is one of those movies that was totally, I think, mismarketed. Or, I mean, I think it was probably marketed that way for a very specific purpose, like as a romantic comedy. But yeah, I remember seeing this and feeling like at the end it really is about this idea of like him learning not to focus on himself so much, but on his family and the people that he loves around him, and what and all the value that is there in the flaws and stuff. And yeah, it's I like that movie a lot. It's really good.
I actually saw this movie for the first time fairly recently, and I really enjoyed it. And lately, I've been reading a lot of different books and a lot of philosophy. And one of the things I like, a really cool thing I learned at the time, just kind of a philosophical point of view of life, really ties together well with the movie, and it's that you should look at kind of life and life situations as if you were experiencing them for the second time. So as if you had already experienced them, or as if you had already made the decision, and at this time, this is almost your time that you had the opportunity to go back and remake the decision, if that makes any sense. And you know, with that sort of mindset, you'll make better decisions. You know, you will be kinder. You will try to look at things from a different perspective. And I kind of really like the message of that movie, of just kind of living in the moment. You know, yeah, that's what I have to say.
And I will say too, Domhnall Gleeson,
I don't know if any of that makes any sense.
No, it does. Yeah.
Before this, he'd only been in a couple bit parts, but really also like philosophical resonant stuff. And Harry Potter, you know, props Charlie. But, sorry, Pill, whoa.
Holy shit.
But more importantly, right around the same time, and I don't know the release date, is he was in an episode of Black Mirror called Be Right Back, where he is Ash, and he's brought back to life, essentially, by his girlfriend. And it's one of my favorite episodes of Black Mirror. Just speaking to the negativity of technology, like, to bring someone back, it's funny how it deals with some of those ideals and her regrets of trying to replace that person and correct that. Two really positive, emotional, resonant things that Domhnall did back to back.
And I also say in this movie, Bill Nighy, I always have a hard time saying that name, but he plays the father, and he's anything he's in, I just love him in. I think that he is really great. Kind of emotional anchor for that movie.
Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Old Man.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly.
Oh, I mean, the head vampire in Underworld.
Yes, also that. Holy shit. We need to talk about all the Underworld movies at some point, because am I the only one who's seen all of them?
I've seen 2 or 3 of them.
Can I
I would love to do like a full episode just on Underworld movies.
Underworld is
Do a
like
mini
my
Underworld.
guiltiest pleasure I have in my life, and I'm about to talk about something that's really embarrassing later in this episode. So that is saying something. Yeah, I own every What the fuck
You
am I
own
doing?
all of them?
I own them digitally. I couldn't commit. I couldn't commit to erecting a monument. To
Don't
Underworld
watch the
on my-
director's cut of the original. It sucks.
There's nothing wrong with
Did we
erecting
watch
to
that
Kate
together
Beckinsale.
at-
Because I bought I got a split disc set at Walmart,
My goodness.
and we watched it at the apartment. I was like, "What the fuck is this?
I remember that.
Just extra scenes."
Oh, man, that's so
My brother gave me a DVD copy of Spider-Man 3, so I know your shame. Which is not a guilty pleasure. I straight up hate it. Anyway, so that is actually what? Are you
Said
serious?
take that back.
Oh, get the hell!
Oh,
Oh my!
I gotta do this right now.
That's
not,
actually
not in the new decade. Can we please have a clean slate for a while?
I'm sorry. All right.
And that is how we're going to go ahead and end the first half of our recap of the year and the decade. Thanks for joining us, and we'll be back next week, and we will go ahead and round out the rest of our favorites of the year and decade, as well as our wild cards. But thanks for tuning in. I'm Mitchell Marshall.
I'm Tyler McKinley.
Riley Harris.
Marcus Marinos.
Tyler Harris.
Justin Hammer.
Hey, if you want to email us, it's rewatchersonthepod@gmail.com or follow us on Twitter or Instagram @rewatcherspod. Thank you.
Every fucking time.